I always loved writing. I always loved reading science fiction and fantasy. When I was a kid, we only had 5 channels. I watched a lot of Godzilla movies. I did Godzilla fan fiction and wrote giant maps of Monster Island and stuff. And I was just always into it. I loved it. My library, the library we went to, had children's books right next to the science fiction, the adult science fiction and fantasy. So I kind of naturally, I read a lot of books that were probably over my head at the time. But I just loved it.
And so when did you actually start writing?
In college, I started going to writers' workshops, and I started trying to do short stories. I continued it after I graduated. I wrote my first novel when I was 25, and it was published in 1993. It was The Element of Fire. It was a fantasy. It came out from Tor Books, and I've been publishing books ever since.
So that's what you do full time?
Yeah. Well, now I do it full time. When I started out, I was doing it, in the evening, in the morning, and between,
Any gap of time.
Any gap of time, yeah.
I understand that. I'm an engineer, but I kind of blog whenever I get a chance.
Yeah.
So I do have my day job, but maybe one day I'll transition. So Star Wars is one of my favorite. I see you have a Star Wars book here. So when in the timeline does your book occur?
It occurs right after, not very long after A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, and it was part of a series where they were trying to get Star Wars or fantasy and science fiction authors who hadn't written Star Wars before but were fans to do books. And I did the one focused on Princess Leia. James S.A. Corey did the one on Han Solo, and Kevin Hearn did the one on Luke Skywalker. And the other characters were in each one, but basically the main character is Leia. And, yeah.
So how, if you haven't written in the Star Wars universe, how did you get acclimated into it to start writing?
Oh, I was always a huge fan. I mean, I saw it when I was a little kid. I think I was 13, and I always loved it. I'd always been a big Star Wars fan, so I read fanzines and I wrote fan fiction and everything when I was growing up, and so I just was always a big Star Wars fan. So I already kind of knew everything, so it wasn't really hard to get acclimated to doing the book.
Well, I guess because there are different authors, for a lot of the books that are after Return of the Jedi too, to keep the continuity. Do you interact with the other authors too? Do you chat with them at all and see what directions they're going for things in the future that they may want to reference? Because yours is earlier.
Yeah, well, this was supposed to be kind of separate from the expanded universe.
Okay.
I think so. We didn't really have to do that. I'd read some of those books. I hadn't read the whole thing, but I'd read quite a few. I read Barbara Hambly. I was one of my favorites, and so yeah, it was kind of separate. And then I think Disney when they bought, they decided they didn't want to call the expanded universe canon, which is kind of disappointing.
I was very sad about that. Those were books I read. I was hoping we were going to try to follow in those directions.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were disappointed in that, and it's kind of like, well, it's like they could have just gone a different direction with the movies, but they didn't have to make it not.
They totally changed it.
Yeah.
Because I have all those books. Yeah, it's sad. But so outside of Star Wars, what would you say was one of your favorite books that you've read?
The Books of the Raxura series. I don't know. I don't really have my favorite book is probably the one I'm working on now, kind of thing. But that's been my favorite fantasy series. It's shape-shifting dragon people in a very alien world, and I can kind of do anything I want with it. And I've just been really enjoying writing it.
So how much of your science fiction do you feel is based on fact, and how much is based on your imagination and creativity?
I try to do a little bit on fact. It's more important when I was doing the Stargate Atlantis tie-ins, because so much of that is based on it's set in our world, and so you have to get all that. You have to do research and get all that right. I do a lot of research for my fantasy, because it's kind of, I feel like you have to kind of know how things work in reality before you can make up your own. So very little of it's based in fact, but a lot of it sort of comes from things I've researched and learned. So.
How do you do your research? How would you research for your novels?
Oh, it depends on the setting. It's usually, that's why I usually start with first is the world building. So if it's going to say, like I did one called City of Bones that was set in a mostly desert landscape where there'd been like a kind of a Holocaust, and so I looked up, I read about desert living and cultures all over the world, and I tried to kind of pull from different things that would work in my fantasy world. So I try to do that.
And if you had any book that would be made into a film, what book that you've written would you like to see as a movie?
I think I'd like to see The Cloud Roads, the first Raxura book, because I really, really enjoyed writing that one, and I had a lot of fun with it. And it's very visual since the characters can fly. So, and there's a lot of travel and back and forth, and people flying fight scenes while flying. So I think that would be a really cool movie.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark.